it racist?
No.
Scheme?
It isn't. I think the Employment Equity Act makes it quite specific that as much as our Constitution and our Bill of Rights outlaw discrimination on race and other unfair discrimination on race, that empowerment activities and empowerment initiatives taken to redress the past are not racist, and that includes affirmative action. So I think the critical thing here is that, initially Sasol has shown that it would like to include all its employees, and that's what they tried to do with the first scheme that they had within Zalo. But that was done at a time when, it was in July 2008, the oil price hit a high of $147, and I think projections were that it was going to continue going in a one-way street. The Sasol share price at the time was 366 or so that the deal was struck at, and projections again was that it would go all the way to about 900. So
it's not looking so good now.
So that didn't happen, and for a very long time it looked like the share scheme was underwater, and it looked like Sasol would have to cough up cash to pay back the 7.4 billion that's still owed there. And it's only now with the share price above 483 at around 520 that they're going to be able to pay it back based on the share price, and also have some benefit, about R1 billion or so for the shareholders. And so I think they've learned their lessons there, that I think they'd like to be generous and magnanimous, but their reality is that this is an empowerment scheme. It's not just an employee incentive scheme. It's specifically for black employees, and so you've got to limit the scheme to black employees because it costs a lot. The Inzalo one was about 28 billion rand. This one is about 21 billion rand.
Okay, I'll get back to you on that. Do you think it's racist, as many of the white workers there feel it is?
I'll agree with Karabo. These are the initiatives that are meant to do what we call the redress, because there is history in our country created through a system. I won't go back to that far. But Sasol has got to be recommended for having taken this bold step. Let me put it clearly, we're not opposed to anybody wanting to go on strike, but I think in this case, the principle, I struggle to relate to exactly what is the principle as a response by Solidarity on this matter, away from it being a racial action by themselves, not Sasol.
Okay, let's hear what Solidarity has to say, if we may. This is Solidarity CEO Dirk Herman, and he was talking about the scheme a little earlier.
There will be a guy that works for 40 years at Sasol, loyal for 40 years. But then there will be a guy that worked there for 3 weeks. The guy that's there for 3 weeks will get share value of 500,000 rand.
So that's possibly an example why they are demonstrating.
No.
And let's just talk about, we're going to have a gentle conversation about being,
Yeah.
I mean, the sort of human element here about people like that who've been working for many years, and then somebody comes in and earns lots of money and they feel, well, it's not fair.
Look, why do we wait for 40 years to raise an issue that you are not part of a system that is aiming to benefit you if you are not a beneficiary of the system? And lately, when then those who come and work for 3 years happen to be black and are suggested to benefit out of the system, out of a clear policy. The BE is a policy of government, and we are supportive of that. Look, they have a right to raise whatever issue, but it shouldn't come across as a racial issue as it is coming now. And I want to stick to Karabo's line that let's accept that there's a policy, and Sasol, in implementing this policy, which is a BEE policy, people should embrace that. Other than coming to attack it at a point when it is heightened. My context of the issue is the colleagues are raising this matter in the context of a debate raging in South Africa at the moment. And the reality of that debate is about ownership. Talk about land, it is that debate. talk about empowerment economically, it has to do with the ownership patterns of our country. And if we don't address that, then we'll have the problems that we're going to be having.
People understand that it needs to be addressed. We're just talking about the sort of machinations and the sort of messages that come out. And here now, what you've got is, I should imagine, great divisions within Sasol. Possibly there were divisions before, they've been exacerbated now by this, haven't they? Is there a better way of communicating what should work and what should be done within the BEE framework so that the whites understand this is what's going to happen and why? And then, you know, and how it's addressed to the black workers. Does that need to be changed, possibly?
I think in general in the country, we seem to only engage in issues of race when something comes up. You know, when you have somebody posting a video, a racist video or something, then we start having this engagement. And I think we need to, and that's when passions are high, and it's difficult, I think, to come to a sort of a consensus and understanding.
But what I'm saying is, should something be done before those passions reach that point?
Yes, because I think the majority of the people in the country, black and white, recognize that, you know, we've got an imbalance that is historical, and something has to be done. And I think we need to discuss these things outside of these events that are explosive and that are quite emotional. But I think the critical thing is, I was saying, that these are very costly exercises. You know, the first one, as I said, was 28 billion. This one is 21 billion rand. And Sasol aims to increase, to get its share, to its black ownership from this agreement 25%. And so it's you know, if they want to include, and I'm sure they would like that, but what that means is that they've got to now go and spend a whole lot more. You know, they've got to spend 40 million, 30 billion, 40 billion just to accommodate other people. And so this must be separated from just an incentive scheme in a company that recognizes long service, that recognizes performance, etc., to something that is specifically geared towards redressing an imbalance and not necessarily an incentive or a reward for employees.
Okay, but now we're looking at potentially a 3-week strike. What sort of impact do you think it'll have on the operations of Sasol and the workings of everybody else?
I wish it would have no impact, because if we allow it to have an impact to the benefit of solidarity, we would then have to forget about affirmative action in this country, as they have opposed it before. They've gone to court to reverse affirmative action decisions. We have got to forget about the employment equity in South Africa, because they have taken government to court on the implementation of that policy. This one, again, we may have then forget Karabo about black economic empowerment. We are not envious about solidarity going on strike for the first time in South Africa. 25 years into our democracy, they choose to go on strike against the black empowerment policy implementation by Sasol. It's a sad day. We really should get them to embrace the transformation agenda, which I think they're still struggling. A conversation on the table on what are their concerns would be the best thing to do, other than this post-sharing. I want to call it that way, what is unfolding.
Let's hear what
now.
Sean has to say from Cape Town. Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, I'm just calling in to say that, like, my point of view states that BE favors some and not all. At the end of the day, certain people will leave the organization, namely Sasol, and I think a diagnostic analysis has to take place, or certain people will leave the market. And at the end of the day, my viewpoint is that this panel that is speaking here gives one point of view, and that is from one race, and that besides others. At the end of the day, I'm colored, yet I'm not considered black enough. If I look at my university application as well, I'm not too black, or I'm not too white, or whatever. And that, I just think BE favors certain people and not all. The government needs to relook how the laws, and or at the end of the day, follow the international way of doing things. I'm not saying that we should become colonized, whatever, before my words are taken out of context, whatever. But if you look at Japan, look at your partners, and that, like, BRICS, perfect example, and that follow them and see what they're doing.
Okay.
And then you can see how the markets are performing, how the economies, how the laws, and how the people are doing things on that side.
Okay.
That's the only way how
Sean,
we can succeed.
All right, thank you for that. How does this policy deal with people who feel that they're falling through the cracks, that they don't fit anywhere particularly and not looked after?
Well, I mean, I think it's an unfortunate feeling, and it's something that has to be addressed. But generally, I mean, if you look at, for example, the Employment Equity Act, it companies have to base their employment equity activity and their targets based on the economically active population of the country. So they have to mirror the demographics of the country in terms of race and in terms of gender also. So that takes specific care to say, look, there's Indians and coloreds that have to be included in employment equity, and it's not just black Africans that have to be included. And so I think it is unfortunate that people feel like that. I think BEE is aimed at redressing. I mean, there was legislated, I think, discrimination and exclusion in the country. And it is critical that legislation helps to reverse that, because otherwise, you know, the reason why BEE was enacted around 2003 or so, why it started, was that after 1994, we assumed that now we've got liberation, we're all one, we've got a rainbow nation, and things would fix themselves. It became very apparent very quickly that that wasn't going to be the case, and that an intervention was required.
Okay, sorry, can we jump in here because we're running out of time? Last question to you, and brief, if you will. How important a case is this for BEE? I mean, is it a test case, do you think?
It is a test case, one for the defense of the policy, but improved to address the concerns Sean is raising, because it has been raised many times. We hear the colored communities saying, no, we think we are left behind on this one. It favors Africans. So we have to strengthen. I know that there's been there's continuous improvement on the BEE codes to try to address those issues, including the issues of women in the same context, white women who have been addressed, not in the context of the BEE policy, however, in the gender parity that has got to be achieved in South Africa, because women are oppressed triple: race, gender, class.